All right, so we're going to talk about Serum today. Probably should have run a poll on Serum and how familiar you guys are already with it. I actually picked it up not too long ago, but I really love it. I've been working with it a lot since. And mainly for this webinar, I wanted to explore more of the more of advanced options. We're mainly going to talk about the Wave Edit window. But first, I'll just run the first video, and then I'm gonna pause it sometimes, and I'm gonna explain what some of the things are doing. And this one is about importing audio, and there are several different ways to import audio, and you have to find the best one for your purpose. And I'm starting that right now. You should see the video coming up right now. So here I'm importing a drum loop, which would be considered a fairly complex sound. And complex sound in Serum, we have to keep remembering that it's not a sampler; it's a wavetable synthesizer. And a wavetable synthesizer, what it basically does, it will just check out the waves and fill a table of those waves. So it's a form of subtractive synthesis. Normally, with subtractive synthesis, we start with a wave like a saw wave. And we start building up waves. So we might have a saw, a triangle, a square, and then we're gonna take away from that because those waves are very rich. They have lots of harmonics, especially the saw wave. We don't often want all that, so we're gonna filter and we're gonna apply envelope shapes to the sound to take away from that very rich signal that we start with. That's why it's called subtractive synthesis. Now with wavetable synthesis, we sort of do the same. We still start with these waves, but now we have a whole table of waves. So we can scan through that table. So we can go from a saw to a sine to a square to whatever wave you want. So right now I've imported a drum loop, and you can see that we have that big window, which is the wave edit window. And below there you have these sort of thumbnail images. Those are the individual waves in the table. So the whole set of waves would be the wavetable. And we can scan through that wavetable to sort of recreate and hear our drum loop again. So in order to do that, we need to go from the first wave all the way to the last one. We sort of need to play through that file. So you can see I have one knob right there, which is the wavetable position. And that knob that sets where we are right now inside the wave. So if you want it to behave more like a sampler and want to play back something, we need to set it all the way at the beginning to go to the beginning of the wavetable. And then we need to let it scan through all the way to the end and then jump back. So if you think about an audio region playing back to you inside your DAW, you sort of have your marker, like your DAW marker, and it's playing through the file, and then if it's looping, it jumps back to the beginning, plays through the file again. We're doing that exact same thing here with the wavetable position, but we're doing that with an LFO. So we make a ramp up shape, and ramp up shapes are important for a lot of this type of stuff because they do that looping kind of thing. So we do that to hear sort of our drum loop back, and you can hear that it's not really sounding that great as a drum loop, but it can sound great for other purposes. So you can hear you can hear the snare in there, but it doesn't sound really good, and we can also hear a lot of clicks. Now those clicks are you get those when you sort of cut off a wave in the middle, when it's not at the zero position. So in the import menu, those options, the first three of them, and I'll play the video until a point where we can actually see them. So here we have the first option is audio via dynamic pitch 0 snap and then via dynamic pitch follow. So the first option, the 0 snap, this will actually try and look for 0 crossings in your audio file. And a 0 crossing is somewhere really where there's no audio. A very short period of time inside the cycle where we don't actually hear anything, because this is where we can safely cut the file without getting clicks. If we click it somewhere in the middle, if we cut the file in the middle of a wave, then you're gonna have a click right there. All right. So these first two options, they try to, or the first option try to locate that 0 snap. For the second option, that doesn't do that. So the second option is more useful for complex sounds, because complex sounds often don't have 0 crossings. For example, this drum loop has a little bit of reverb on there, which basically means that there's always going to be a little bit of signal on your sound. So we cannot find them. So in that case, it's better not to go look for them and use the second option. So in short, the first option is for simpler sounds, and the second option is for more complex polyphonic sounds. So we can hear this second option for this drum loop actually sounds a lot better. We can even hear the snare in there. The snare is still pretty good sounding. The kick is still pretty good sounding. Still, we have quite a lot of clicks. Now, there are quite some options to fix those clicks. And one of the options is to take a smaller loop and create more morphing waves. Because Serum can only take, well, only it's quite a lot, but it can take up to 256 waves. And when you import a longer audio file, it's gonna make an average of that. So it's gonna not exactly map all the positions. So when we divide that loop into half, we have more resolution to build up the original wave, which is what I'm doing to make it sound a little bit smoother. And then there are some other options in the wave edit window as well, like filtering and crossfading between the different wavetables. So we can invert that wave by just inverting the modulator. So instead of going and reading from the beginning of the wavetable to the end, we start reading at the end and then listen to the beginning. So it's just going to sound like an inverted loop. So those are all your waves right now, those at the bottom, and you could see that we have 256, which means that we're at our maximum. We cannot do a whole lot with that. We cannot create new waves because we're maxed out in terms of our waves. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to divide these. I'm going to make half the amount of waves. And then we can, so that will be 128, and then we can morph the waves better. So we can create new waves in between the existing ones that sort of crossfade towards the next one, which is gonna reduce the amount of clicks considerably, something like that. Alright, so I used the process menu to do that, and to quickly explain those options at the top there, we have single, process, morph, add, remove, sort, import, and export. Now the single, that only works for the wave that is currently visible in that big window. So right now it would add it on that wave that you can see right now, and then it has some options there like inverting it, changing the phase, etc. The process basically has the same options and then some more, but it does it for all of the waves at the same time. So it does it for the whole wavetable. And I use the process menu to divide the whole number. Then we have a morph menu next to that, which has some different options as well. And this is very useful if you want to reduce those clicks, because it can morph from one wave to another, making it sound a lot smoother, a lot better, basically. And we'll get into that more later. Then we have add or remove, where you can just take out certain waves and remove them. We have sort, which is also quite useful. It can, for example, take a look at the whole wavetable and organize it differently. So it can find, for example, the brightest waves, and you can put them all at the start of the sound. So for a drum loop, that's totally gonna mess him up, because it will probably put all these snares at the beginning of the file. But it basically is a way to reorganizing those waves. And then we have an import audio menu, which we just used, and export. So we can make our wavetables and use them in other wavetable synthesizers. So right now, with that modulation assignment we have right there, we can basically change the range, and it will sound slower and grimier. And we can also completely stop it, which is when we're just hearing a wave. So basically, we have a lot of different waves right now that we can choose from. I choose between those waves with the modulator, but you can also freeze it in time, or you can apply some envelopes on or velocity to it. Basically, we have all these different flavors because we used a drum loop which has so many complex regions that we now have a very complex wavetable, which is a fun way to start sort of designing, because you have a lot of options to choose from. So right now I'm applying two other modulators besides that LFO to that wavetable position. One is the velocity, meaning that for a higher velocity it will go to a further point inside the wave, and the other one is the node number, or the node. The node number basically means that for higher notes it's gonna send a higher value as well. So if you have a melody with some range, then the higher notes are gonna sound a little bit differently. In this case, they're going to sound quite a lot differently because the wave is so complex. For more simple wavetables, you can just make it a little bit brighter on higher notes. So next to that wavetable position knob, we have one other knob which is normally empty, but you have like different options there that you can choose from. And right now it's set to FM from B, which means that oscillator B is going to frequency modulate the frequency of oscillator A. So we're using oscillator B as a control signal. We're using it just as an LFO, but then a very fast one applied to the pitch, which is FM. So you can see that on oscillator B, the level is all the way down. So we don't hear that oscillator by itself, we just hear the effect of it. It needs to be switched on in order to have an effect, but we don't need to hear it. So that's why we put the level all the way down. This can give some very aggressive effects, especially in combination with the aggressive waves that we made out of a drum loop. All right, so that was the first idea I wanted to show you. Now I want to take this thing a little bit into a different direction. I want to give something for everybody. This is more of the aggressive approach to this sound design. And now I want to take this same drum loop and take it into more of a melodic arpeggiator kind of sound using a comb filter. So for those that didn't attend my class or don't know about comb filters, a comb filter is sort of a cheat. It's not really a filter. It's just a delay. If you set a very short delay with a very high feedback setting, you're getting a new tone, because that delay, because it's fast, we know that if audio is faster, it changes the pitch. If we play back some vinyl at a different speed, different speed than intended, it's gonna change the pitch of what we hear. So this is true for everything in audio. So with the delay, we can make pitch-like effects because we can change the delay time, and that's why comb filters are great for adding some melody to sort of material that didn't have melody to begin with. So a drum loop doesn't have a lot of melody to listen to, so we can mimic that using a comb filter, which again is just a delay. So you can, if you don't have a comb filter, you can just make this using a delay and setting a very short delay time and very high feedback settings. So now, instead of just sweeping through the file with that ramp up shape, we're going to step through the file with sort of a stepper LFO. So it's going to jump to different positions inside that loop, inside the wavetable, and it's going to freeze there. This is sort of a sample and hold style melody, where it will go to a place, freeze there, go to a new place, freeze there, but it doesn't, it never has a fade, it only freezes it, and this can give these very cool sort of stepped melody kind of sounds. So Serum has a whole bunch of different comb filters, and for comb filters what we need to do is we need to set the cutoff and the resonance. Those are the important controls. The resonance is the feedback of the delay. You need quite a high resonance to sort of start hearing the effect. So what feedback will do is we'll take the output and we'll feed it back into the input. So it's going to basically apply that effect again and again and again over each other, and this is building up, and this is what is creating part of that tone. Then we need to set the cutoff, which is the frequency, which is actually the delay time. So a very low cutoff setting is very short delay times, and only at shorter times we start to hear the pitch. If the cutoff is set too high, we hear it just as a delay. So we use the cutoff to tune our melody because that's the frequency. So I'm gonna take this one back a few seconds. So this is the modulation matrix in Serum, and we can see on the left we have our source, so what we're using to modulate something else. Then we have the amount slider, which is gonna tell how much that is going to modulate the other knob. Then we have the destination, the knob that we're actually controlling. So you can see at the lowest sort of row that we have the note number as the source, with a full amount going to the filter cutoff. So this means that the filter cutoff is going to listen to this note number. And in the case of a comb filter, that means that we're going to play in tune always, because normally a filter doesn't care about the notes that you're playing. So you need to tell it to listen to the note number. and this is scanning through LFO2. So that's kind of a tricky concept if you're not used to it, but we're using a VIA control, and in Serum these are called aux sources. And aux sources are another modulator through which you scan the first modulator. So the first modulator only has effect if the second modulator is working. So the second modulator is that stepped LFO that we can see at the bottom. So now we're combining these two modulators, and together they're controlling the cutoff and making our melody. So comb filters can be a little bit tricky to work with because they, well, you can hear it right now, they create quite a lot of chaos. So what I'm doing to sort of help take the sound back to a normal point is I'm using another LFO, which I sort of set up as an envelope on the level control. So one way of designing sound is just to start with a whole bunch of crazy sounds. Just start with some madness like this, and then take it back and try and see if you can find that area in the sound that you like and that you want to capture. For me, I really like the tone of this and how the tones are changing. I like how bright and sort of aggressive it is. I don't like that I have less of control. It's probably difficult to use it, so that's why I control the master level, which is a great way of taking it back to a sensible place again. I was talking, but my microphone was muted. I was telling that the next video I want to show you, that's actually my favorite thing about wavetable synthesizers. So there's one thing I sort of want to talk about in terms of wavetable synthesis. There's one big advantage that they have, and that is that they can move from one wave to another. And the big advantage there is that with normal subtractive synthesis, if we want to create something, what's happening in the real world, like acoustic sounds, then the only thing we really can do is we can start with all harmonics and then we filter away harmonics. So take a guitar, for example. You pluck a string and you hear sort of the metallic sound. Those high frequencies, they always die earlier. They roll off earlier than low frequencies. So most real-world sounds, they start brighter and then become duller. We can do something like that with filters in subtractive synthesis, and we can apply an envelope to the filter and let it start at a very, very high, bright point, and then we close the filter down, quite a common technique. And that's sort of effective, but it's pretty fake because that wave is not changing, and in the real world waves are constantly changing. The timbre of the sound is changing. So with Serum and with other wavetable synthesizers, we can actually make the sound a different wave at a different point in time. So we can make it start with a brighter wave and then go back to a duller wave. For example, going from a pulse wave or a square wave to a sine wave, and we can use an envelope to do that. So it can sound more natural, sort of more organic. That's what I'm doing in this third video, where I apply the key follow to that wavetable position. So that means that for higher keys it's going to be brighter, and for lower keys it's going to be lower. It's giving a very natural sort of effect. So I start with just this sine wave. This is my base wave. In this example, we're not importing anything. We're not analyzing audio. We're starting from scratch, and we're starting with one wave, and that one wave is just a sine wave. So now I can make a second wave, and I can make that one a brighter wave. So I can make that a saw or a square or something like that. And then we can use the two waves to make our eventual sound. This right here is the important part. This is the morphing. And if I just have two waves, like a sine and a square, that's going to sound terrible, because if you have a pluck or sort of a melodic sound like this, and you fade between those, you just hear that click going from a saw to a sine. So we need to make a smooth transition, and that's where we use the crossfades. So in this case, I have only two waves, and if I select those two holding shift and click them both, and they become blue, then if I go to morph and then crossfade, it will fill out the wavetable, so all the 256 options, and everything in between, it will sort of crossfade from that sine to that saw, which is going to sound very natural. That's the first option, the morph crossfade, which is the most common option to use. Then there's three other morph options, which is spectral, zero, fund phases, and all phases. So what spectral will do is, instead of just doing a volume fade, it will actually take a look at the wavetable on the left and the right. So let's say you have three wavetables and one in the middle is a sine. It will look at this sort of left body and its right body, and it will see the spectral content in that. So it will see what the wave looks like, and then it's resynthesizing a new wave to go in between there. So it's a bit more, or actually a lot more complex than the normal crossfade, which is what basic wavetable synthesizers do. And it can sound pretty good, but for normal synthesis, often the crossfade is a little bit better, because spectral tends to blur the sound a little bit. It becomes a little bit less defined. And then we have the zero fund phases and zero all phases, which has to do with whether it will keep the phase of the sound intact. And the phase is probably something that we need to investigate, time in a little bit further down the road. But basically it means that it's gonna how do I explain this in one simple sentence? If we do the zero all phases, it's gonna sound smoother, because it doesn't deal with the phase at all. It just puts all the phases to zero and doesn't care about where they are right now. So it's gonna sound smoother. But for this, we're just using crossfade. So now I've set the note number to the wavetable position, meaning that for a higher note, it's going to play that sort of brighter saw sound, and for the lower note, it's going to play that sine sound. So we can tweak this range, this note range, to be in the ideal position. And you can see my melody on the background right there. And I purposely made a melody which has quite a lot of range. And that's to hear the effect better. If you have a melody that's very close together, like if you only have the third, and if you only play thirds and maybe root notes, then it's not going to have a very big effect. but this melody spans for over an octave, so it's gonna have quite an extreme effect. And to make that even more extreme, we can tweak that graph. So this basically maps the input notes to the output value. So right now we can we have only used 2 waves so far. We can of course make it more complex. We can start with like 4 different waves and then morph between those. One other option I want to point out there is the sort. So if we this is where the sort comes in useful, because it can take a look at those brighter waves and put them all at the start or at the end. That's great for these pluck kind of sounds, because you normally want the brightest waves to be all on one side to make it sound more natural. I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit because I want to give you room for some questions, and I have one other video after this. So I'll just show the end result of this sound. So basically what I added is a bunch more envelopes, a slow attack on the main envelope. I've added a second oscillator, which is being controlled by oscillator A. So right now oscillator A is pretty interesting because it has that changing timbre. We're using different waves and we're going between those waves. So if we use oscillator A as the source for oscillator B is going to be interesting as well, because it's going to listen to the frequency of oscillator A. So oscillator B right now, the source is just a saw wave, but it still sounds pretty interesting. Alright, I have one last thing I want to show you, and that is how to make your own waves. I'm gonna skip through that video a little bit, but basically what I did is I took a look at the factory waves that are in there. Some I really like, some were made by Steve Duda himself. And because it's important to realize here that these waves, they're just audio files that are being played back, and the playback rate is going to be your pitch, or how fast it loops through the file. But the content of the audio file, that's going to be your wavetable. So I wanted to take a look at the original audio files, which is, for example, that one. So these are just the factory waves. And here you can actually see the location of those waves. And these are just 1 second audio files that we can listen to, and then we can remake them. And what I found is that the vowel, the vowel section, those were my favorite waves. They sort of have these human harmonics in them, but they sound more like sort of animal sounds. This is one example. It almost sort of sounds like a lion growl, or some kind of big cat sound. So I thought, why not use a real lion sound and use that as the source for my synthesis. So I happen to have some tiger roarings always around, like that one, and they have this really nice texture and harmonic. So I'm sort of cleaning up that file to make a wavetable out of it. So once I've done that, I can import it in Serum using the same technique as what we did with the drum loop. Now, when you do this, and when you start importing sort of sound randomly, or sort of randomly, there's often a lot of things that we need to fix. Right now, you see we have a lot of empty wavetables, which is just the silence in the audio file. We can delete those. We can also max out the sound. So if we normalize them, which is quite a common thing to do, it will take a look at the loudest point in the wave and set that to 0 dB. So it's making all of the different waves as loud as possible, which is sometimes a good thing to do because it can make your wavetable sound a lot more consistent. So here again we can hear those clicks because we haven't morphed the sound yet. So it's jumping from one wave to quite different waves, which is giving those clicks. So we need to again have the size of the table and give us some room to work with, and then we have room to actually morph those waves. So you can hear that already sounds a lot smoother. We can also hear sort of the Formant sounds in there. So Formants are very specific frequencies that are made by humans and animals, and you get those frequencies just by how your throat and your vocal cords are designed. And we can mimic those, and the dubstep guys did that a lot for those foul Formant bass sounds, talking basses. We can also use them for really beautiful pads and sort of make them sound like singing female vocalists. So that's what I'm going to do for this tiger sound. So there in the process menu are some filtering options, and basically they smooth out the sort of aggressive edges of the sound, which makes it a little bit warmer and a little bit nicer to work with. So you have those two filter options there. You have you have the crossfade option and you have the filter grid size. So the grid size is the size that you see right now there on the background. So you can see that's at 8:8. You can see it in the lower right corner. That's the sort of the resolution that you're working at. So you can change that grid size, and then the effects are going to be more precise, or they're going to be so it's gonna only take a look at within that grid and do its thing. So if you have a higher grid size, it's gonna be more surgical about it. Yeah, so here I'm just stacking a bunch of effects, all space effects. I'm modulating the panning, so the sound moves a little bit to the left and the right. I'm giving it quite a lot of unison. So what unison is, it will copy the signal, do nothing else. So if we play a note, we normally hear one signal. If we set the unison, that number that's now set to 7, if we set that to 2, it will change. It will sort of add another copy of that signal to it, basically making it louder. So we need to do something to that other signal in order to hear sort of a new effect. Otherwise, it's just going to be louder. And what we often do is we detune. So we have, in that case, we say that we have 2 voices, and we detune these voices, which is going to make a richer sound. So we're doing that 7 times. We're copying the signal into 7 new signals, and we're detuning all of them a little bit, giving us a very, very rich, nice, warm sound. And then on top of that, I'm modulating the fine tuning. So even more pitch detuning with an LFO with sort of a small setting, which is just a vibrato effect. So basically there I'm adding the same oscillator again, but then tuning it a bit lower to give some sort of a bass low end to it. We can also use the sub oscillator for that, which is in the upper left. It's just a oscillator to add some extra lows. I prefer to do that with the same signal though. So I copy the signal and use that for the lows, but just drop it an octave. I think we should, I have like lots more stuff to show, but I think we should get into the questions. What do you think, Danny?
Yes, I do too. That was amazing, super clear presentation. Thank you for that. I mean, the melodic stuff, and then the human, almost human big cats singing. Yeah, and you always sort of pull it together at the end. You know, you get into this pure sound thing, and then you always end it big, which is awesome. And I think that's one of the, your style in sound design is like all this craziness. Yeah, it is. I think it's, you know, you get very technical, but at the end of the day, you want an emotional result. And I feel like you always do that at the end. It's like it's amazing. So thank you for that.
You need to hunt for it, sort of the emotion thing, or that's what I know. That you need. It's difficult to think about that, so you need to think about adding chaos and then finding the emotion in that, and then you sort of feel, and you get, just as making a song, you feel guided by what you found in what you've created.
It's a fun journey. It's completely amazing. And Serum, you know, you're showing the power of it, but wow, that's a seriously engineered bit of, you know, device there. Let's do this, everybody. We want to do questions. I'm sure that there must be questions. As you think of your question, go to the materials section. You'll see it in your go to training bar window and download the PDF. Tell me if you can't see it or you can't do that. Mixmaster Wyatt's Summer Core Courses PDF. And if you could play it like an activity, like a video, they'll be able to see it. It's weird, but play the PDF. It's in the materials.
I'll play the PDF.
It won't play it. It won't play it, but people will see it if you can start it.
It's opening right now.
Okay, great. So, everyone in the poll said that they liked to learn with teachers, and is really world class and one of the best. And he has 2 courses that start next week. I don't see it yet. Is it still opening up?
I do. Yeah, I do see it.
You do see it. Okay. Hold on,
share otherwise?
Yeah, do a screen. Yeah, go ghetto and do the screen share.
I'll do that.
Take it back to the old school. Okay. So there is our secret Batcave. It's not Photoshop. That's a real picture. Just in case you're wondering, that's completely real. So here's our summer core course catalog. Some people are downloading it. Yes? Okay, good. It's working. So these are just a couple of our recent graduates who are doing things. And there's Rio de Janeiro. Okay, good. Keep downloading. There's more people, happy core course people. And just stop right there for a second. So, we have all kinds of ways to learn at the school, but our most intense and personal live interactive way is our core courses. They're 2-month courses. They meet twice a week. Many of you know because you're OG core course people. And then there's 1 office hour a week that your keeps. And you really take 2 months and you go through a curriculum that's been very carefully curated and is constantly updated by the teachers because we're lunatics and we keep wanting to make it better. So it's literally is super duper fresh. So if we scroll down here, let's get to, there's a little mixing and mastering. Those are, you can, if you want to take a mixing and mastering core course, jump in with me. It'll be 1 week late, but we'll get it going. So here's mixing foundations, but let's go to sound design. Let's skip ahead. People can read through the mixing and mastering stuff on their own. And here is sound design. So I don't know, do you want to just very briefly, and then we'll get to questions, just talk about the 2 different courses that are starting next week and what people should expect?
Yes, so we have Sound Design Foundations and Next Level. The Foundations is basically this stuff. The guy that made Serum, he gave us a nice discount for the school, and we're gonna pick up Serum and we're gonna learn about wavetable synthesis. So basically subtractive synthesis, but a little bit more advanced. That's the main thing, and I want to make sure that your 30% discount, that is, Alberto. I just want to make sure that you're super familiar with synthesizers and that you know envelopes, modulation effects, all that kind of basic stuff, so that you're really good with one product. And that is next to all the common effects, recreating sounds, finding your signature sound, and everything that you can read as well. Then, if you have that, or if you know it already, there's the next level sound design, which is going to take a look at new, interesting ways to make sounds. Also, some are not so new, like FM synthesis, but we also have spectral synthesis, additive synthesis. We're going to move a lot faster there, and that's why I want to lay the foundation first in the fundamental sound design. So if you know about synths, if you have one that you have really well in your head, you only need to sort of apply it to different tools, but you know sort of the basics. And they keep trying to confuse you with new products, but in next level sound design, we're going to check all those new projects, and you're going to get very, very familiar with all of them. And that's more about exploring sound and making sounds that are totally unique. And the first one is just about getting an idea on sound and how it works in general. Is that clear?
Yeah, that's super clear. And if you could just scroll down just to show the days and times and the prices. Yep. So, oops, up a little. Yeah. Okay, so $497 for Sound Design Foundations, $497 for Next Level Sound Design, and you can even do a payment plan where you can split it up into two payments. So, as usual, if you're ready to go, if you're ready to turn your summer into a summer of sound design knowledge, um, uh, just hit us on the live chat in the website, and we'll get everybody all sorted out. Um, the class times are Monday and for sound design foundations, it's Monday and Wednesday from 3 to 4 p.m. And for next level sound design, it's Tuesdays and Thursdays. I believe that is 4:30 p.m. to
Uh,
5:30. Is that right?
New York time, yeah.
New York time.
Yes.
And then the open office hours where you can come and just chill with and the foundations and the next level people all hang together at the office hours, and that's Thursdays at 5:30 Eastern. So again, if you're ready to jump in next week, we'd love to have you. It's all brand new, fresh, and new. Everything is spanking new, and everything's recorded. If you have to go to work, if you have to go surfing, if you have to take the kids to camp and you miss one, it's always recorded. So yes, that's awesome. All right, so download this PDF, please. I see people can do it. Anything you need from us, hit us on the live chat on our website. And now let's take some questions. Go ahead, anybody, any Serum questions or sound design questions? Go ahead. Jacob says, where can I find your music?
Let me share that. I'm always happy to get that question. I make music too, besides sounds and stuff.
While you're doing that, Alberto asks, do you cover a bit of Serum in the advanced course?
Well, I can show the schedule. I can show the schedule for the advanced course. So we're doing a bit of that, but we're basically using it in a different context because we're not doing so much wavetable synthesis anymore. But Serum has another thing that we haven't talked a lot about right now, which is additive synthesis. And if I'll quickly do a screen share, I'll clean all of the mess right here. We should be able to see Serum. So right now we've only talked about this guy right here, this wave window where we can draw and make terrible or beautiful sounds. But we also have this dude at the top, and this is actually additive synthesis. Here we're drawing sine waves to build a sound. So that's a whole other concept. And we will be talking about that in advanced class. So in that context we will be using Serum, not as much as a subtractive synthesis or a wavetable synthesizer, but we have the office hours, which are they're really great, and we have like people asking questions about all this sort of stuff, and we jump around between cool sound design ideas and listening to music that we are going to analyze and sort of rebuild the sound. So in office hours, anything goes. We can drink there. We can just not talk about sound. They're pretty great. So that would be for if you're doing advanced class, then that would be the place to ask your questions about Serum. I'll show my face.
Good. Other questions? Let's see. John says, I took the Sound Design Foundations class and loved it. You answered every question I had in and out of class. That's awesome. Thank you, John. Steph says, which synths are covered in Foundations, or does it not matter?
I tried to make it not matter, but of course at the end of the day it matters a little bit because you need to at least have it. But I'm trying to talk about the idea because I want you guys to know how the idea, that's why sometimes I get a bit technical about all that wave kind of stuff, because I want you to open a new synthesizer that some crazy dude made in his basement, and he made the interface all messed up and everything looks weird, but I want you to understand the idea and then understand how it works. So that's like the core thing. That being said, of course we need some tools. We're going to talk about a lot about Serum because I like how visual Serum is. It has displays for everything, so if you change something, you can actually see that change and see what it does to the audio. And also where the native instrument bundle, like complete, that wouldn't hurt because then we just have a very strong basis of effects, so we can pull from different sources, different types of synthesizers. It's often a good idea to have that.
Question from Hamad: do you cover Native Instrument Complete 10?
Yes, well,
Native Instruments.
well, yeah. Well, in Essentials we cover only Massive of that, and in Advanced we're having Contact. We have FM8, and we have some Reactor stuff probably. Yeah, Massive is, I mean, now that everybody's looking at Serum, Massive seems sort of like the sad little brother, but it still has some very, very cool things that it can do. And Serum, to answer Cody's questions, I don't know. I have no preference for my eggs. I eat them all, and we will be using Serum. Yeah, for the basic course or the foundations course, it's going to be a lot of Serum.
Good questions. Other questions?
Yeah, I had that with mixing too. That's awesome.
But, and John, I'm having that now with sound design from hanging out with your. I'm hearing sounds and be like, I think I know sort of how that is. And again, you know, I have a ways to go with all of this, but I'm starting to hear like a Radiohead sound or something and be like, I think I know sort of what's happening here. You know, it's fun. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. You can. There's a lot to explore there.
It's your mental vocabulary. It's your perception. It's your awareness. It's so funny. People always talk about making music has to do with your hearing. It's your mind. You know,
Yeah.
it's really
Yeah.
your mind. Other questions? Good.
So Stefan is asking about the remaking sound. So normally, Steph, all right. Normally, remaking sounds is great practice, but I don't consider it to be the most important thing because you want to have your own unique voice. So we're doing some remaking to learn about sound, but it's not our prime activity. And to do that, you choose your own sound. So the way it worked for last semester was that John and all the guys, all my students, they sent me tracks, and I made a video on sort of how to make that sound, or at least how to make the start of that sound, and saying, okay, he's probably using this, and just getting close to that. And then I'll make a video about that. So you choose your own sounds, and of course you're gonna practice with that same sound as well. It's really great practice because you really need to listen in a different way. But that's going to be more towards the end of the course, because you first need to know what certain sounds sound like. For example, if you don't know what a flanger sounds like, you cannot say, well, this is probably using a flanger. So first we're going to learn that, and then we can do the recreating. Your tracks were already pretty good, man.
Two more questions. Anything at all. The final two.
Can I ask a question too?
Please.
Because I have more video. I now showed four videos. I have 5. Are they going to be uploaded somewhere that we are going to email them around?
Yes, they will.
Awesome.
And as well, and this recording as well.
Great. I'm going to rewatch it.
All right. Listen, I just want to thank Yor for a wonderful presentation. I want to thank everybody for coming out today. Mike Hooks putting things together. All the original, I can't say gangster, I think of something else. But all the OG students for showing up, and all the new people. It's great to see you, great to have you. This is how we do it. We do this all the time. This is what we do, and this is how the courses are. They're live, they're interactive, exactly like this. That and come on, that cat. what's the cat's name?
I missed the cat.
I know, that's awesome. It's not a finale without the waving cat. Foxy, of course. Foxy, thanks for coming, Foxy. We'll use your purr as a sound design element next time to make
yes, for the lion growl.
We will, I promise. All right, everybody, listen. Have a wonderful rest of the weekend. Have a great Sunday. Thank you, Mike. Everybody, go make music. Go play with Serum. All right, and hit us up on the live chat. We'd love to see you next week. All right, cheers.
Great.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, guys.